ready for us.
Well, that was weird. Apparently, they decided that I wasn't the one that needed to be seen at first because my entire screen just grayed out for a moment. You two looked amazing. Welcome to Tavern Talks. This is the wonderful place where we interview amazing people throughout the TTRPG community and highlight their accomplishments here. And tonight we have a brand new guest, as usual. This is Interaxion Games. I'm going to say that wrong at least twice tonight, so just bear with me on this one. It's going to happen. But for those that are tuning in for the first time, what we do here is we do full interviews, but it's not the way that anybody else does it. I have no set actual questions other than 3 that I started at the beginning with, and I've been doing it now just off the cuff, and it works wonders. So, but for those that are willing to stick around for the whole hour after we've talked to these two amazing guests, you're going to have your opportunity to ask questions as well. And that's what we call happy hour. And hopefully in 2026, we'll actually have a transition page that shows it all and everything. It's going to be amazing. I'm telling you, just stay tuned. Anyway, I'm excited to hear what's going on over there at Interaxion Games. So I'm going to turn it over to these two amazing folks that I had a chance to talk to right before we popped on here. And they're going to tell us a little bit about what Interaxion Games is and what they're working on. And then we're going to dive into some questions because that's a lot of fun. So take it away, guys.
All right. I guess I'll kick off. I'm Travis. I'm one half of Interaxion Games, and we have been working on releasing and bringing to market a science fiction fantasy hybrid role-playing game that we were involved in back in the late 90s. That just never really got off the ground, and we have a kind of a long story of it, but we're trying to bring it out to market and get people to play it. I know for me personally, and I'm not going to put words in Seth's mouth, but for me personally, I know that playing this game changed my opinion of what role-playing could be. And so for me, it's really important to be able to bring that to the rest of the world so other people can have the same kinds of experiences that I had when I was with this game very early on. So.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Seth, the other half of Interaxion Games. And yeah, we've been working on Altered World for a little while now, trying to resurrect it, bring it back to life and into the marketplace so that other people can enjoy it. Travis and I were reminiscing about this game a few years back now and thinking about what a wonderful experience we had playing it. And the stars aligned and we realized that we were in a position where we could do this, right? And yeah, for me as well, it was formative and transformative to play this game in the role-playing hobby, right? We were with a good group of people back in those days, and it was the right game. You know, we had a lot of fun, and it taught me more about the role-playing hobby and how to bring it to life than I'd seen before. So we want to share that with people.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And I'm curious to dive into the idea of there's a lot of games out there nowadays that blend the difference between sci-fi and fantasy, but how they blend them are so vastly different no matter what game you're looking at. This can go as far as, we've got full-blown fantasy, but at the same time there's somewhat sci-fi-ness in cyberpunk compared to diving into let's go Shadowrun, which is literally fantasy and cyber slammed together into its own world. And then you've got steampunk, which is kind of another type of sci-fi fantasy that you're looking into. So I really am going to be curious to hear how that blends, how you blend those two genres together. Because I think it is something that is definitely in the ballpark nowadays, but at the same time, there's so many ways to do it. But before we do that, we're going to ask the 3 main questions that we hear every week. And these are my favorites because these are what are the building blocks of any game maker, any designer, or any player. And that is, what was your first experience with tabletop? One of you can pick that one.
My first experience with tabletop was, frankly, it was probably surreptitious. I was a young kid when I first got into the game. I was probably like 8, I think, when I first started looking at stuff. And, I'm old enough that was back in the heydays of the Satanic Panic. And my family was very much in that mode of thinking. And I remember I found a couple of inroads. I think one of the first game books I ever purchased was like it was something for first edition Shadowrun that was like a Street Samurai like equipment guide, and so it was just a bunch of pictures and stuff. And I didn't know anything about how the game was played or anything like that. I think the first game book that I was ever able to like acknowledge was a game was, and this is going to date me, first edition Middle Earth role playing, the old Iron Crown Enterprise.
Nice.
And I was able to, because it was based off of Tolkien, and Tolkien was a good Christian man. My parents were able to kind of work around the idea that there's a Balrog in there and whatever.
Yeah, demons and elves and all those weird things that make no sense to the Satanic Panic folks.
Yeah. But that was kind of where it is. And then I fortunately had a friend that was nearby that, was into lots of different games and very, very eclectic. It wasn't, it was back in the day where, everything was basically second edition AD&D. But we played Toon, we played a little bit of GURPS. Marvel superheroes was a big one for us. Delved into Warhammer 40K miniatures a little bit. Like it was all over the place. And I think that eclecticness of what we ended up doing really shaped, I think, where I come from with regards to the hobby.
Awesome. And I'm going to combine the second question, because the second question is really the most important question. And that is, what was the spark that was left that made it so that this was not just a game? It wasn't just something you played once and then you gave up.
Wow, that's a good question.
So you get the chance to think through both of those while he's answering this one, and then we're going to ask the same two questions to you.
So for me, I think it was, I don't know if it's a catharsis or whatever. I will say that like my childhood was extremely volatile with drug abuse and alcohol abuse in the home and things like that. Fortunately, I was never abused, but it was a crazy life, right? And I think there was a certain amount of escapism that was part of it, but there was also this idea of in a life where, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate this back then, but in a life where so much of my energy goes to the mundane and goes to things that like are just a drain, right? The idea that I can, for a period of time, step outside of myself, step outside of the problems that I have, and experience what it's like and practice being a hero is a huge thing for me. And I think it's probably why I gravitate towards paladins and like there's certain things that play out of that it really is about practicing being a hero and getting the opportunity to do things that matter on a scale that's beyond just the day-to-day and the people that I directly influence, right? Like being able to influence the world in that way was part of where my love for it really came from.
Okay. I can definitely respect that. All right. So we're going to ask the same two questions to Seth. So what was your first experience with tabletop role-playing games, and what was that spark that kept you coming back?
Okay. I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
The spark for me, like, it was always going to get me. I was always into sci-fi, fantasy, speculative fiction, whatever you want to call it. I just loved it. So whenever I was going to have that first experience with role-playing, it was going to get me, right? Okay. It was for me right along. It was bound to resonate with me, and it sure did. That first experience, believe it or not, on a school bus. I don't know where we were going, to school, from school, field trip, who knows. But one of my classmates, Clarissa Smith, just happened to ask, like, hey, have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? What's that? And she had her own kind of what we call these days homebrew, knockoff, generic D&D thing that she was doing. And man, it just took off from there, just playing a basic fighter, doing a dungeon crawl, and I grabbing a piece of gold that was on a dungeon floor, and she said very cryptically, there's such a thing as cursed gold, right? Like, wait, what? Okay. Decisions, right?
Yeah.
So, man, the hobby just was so great for me because that capacity for imagination and storytelling. Again, could I have said all this at the time in 7th grade and beyond? No, not so much. But what draws me to the hobby now, for sure, and I think has been a thread throughout, and what I've been saying for the last few years when people ask me to describe what this hobby is, and I've heard other people say it too, it is a collaborative storytelling experience, right? And storytelling is as old as humanity, right? Once we learned how to speak, we started telling stories. It's such a foundational experience to who we are, and it creates tribe. It binds us together in very real ways, meaningful ways. And I love that. Mythology, to step into mythology together, right? The whole energy of yes and that we can achieve when we play these games together. It's so much fun. I really get into it.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's for sure. For somebody who's, I've been diving into different games for the last 15, 20 years, but over the last 5 has really been when I started to really branch out. High fantasy, mid fantasy is kind of where I grew between Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms and the Tolkien series and those types of things. And it got really to the point where something had to break and something had to change. And then I dove into World of Darkness, and we started diving into Call of Cthulhu, and and now we're beyond at this point. So let me ask the third and final question, and then we're going to dive into what Altered World is, because that's the true crust of what we're looking at tonight. And maybe, hopefully, it'll help people that maybe either they can't pick it up or they don't have the money to pick it up, or maybe they're just going to catch a nugget that helps them be a better game master in the long run. That's really our goal tonight, right? When did you decide that I need to get to the other side of the table? So when did you put the player character sheet down and step behind the Dungeon Master screen? One of you can take it.
Relatively early.
Okay.
And you hop back and forth, right?
Some people.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I've hopped back and forth. I've taken turns on both sides of the screen. There's things I love about both. But yeah, relatively early, I took a stab at game mastering. Not saying I did it well by any means, but I'm not sure I do it well now. But I really enjoy it. And
yeah. Let me ask you this question, and this is how I tell all new game masters: did your players come back the next session?
And that's the measure, right?
That's all you got to measure.
That's how you know.
We had an opportunity, quick share, not for me, but for a buddy of mine. So I'm going to shout him out tonight. He's probably not in the channel because he's working on some home stuff. But Chuck is one of our newest game masters here at the channel. And his first game he had ever ran by strangers was on our channel on live. And
no pressure, right?
No pressure, right? But we didn't find out until almost a year, about a half a year later, that his true pressure wasn't running the game against the table of strangers. The pressure was running against a table of people that he looked up to, who he saw higher than himself. And one of the players at his table right now is somebody that he looked up to, and he was getting ready to build their episode. And he was having so much anxiety on it because he was like, I want to make this good for him. I want to make this something he's special. And I said, Chuck, man, I was like, he wouldn't have came to your table if he didn't think you were going to do it right. It's like straight up. I was like, he's been playing with you guys for almost 8 weeks now, but each character, because they're playing Power Rangers, each character got their own like focused episode. And when it came to his, that's when he got nervous. So I tell people all the time, your players keep coming back. You're doing something right, because a lot of game masters, they aren't going to come back then. So yeah, I think you're doing what you need to do to bring the players back, and that's the key. So what about you, Travis?
So for me, it's actually a pretty recent pretty recent change. So I had a couple of instances earlier on in my life where I tried and just most of it was, I think, either a combination of just circumstances where the game just fell apart, the scheduling demon, and to some degree, like not living up to my own expectations, right? Well before Brendan Mulligan was a thing, that was kind of the standard that I was comparing myself to, is I got to put on this grand show, right? And then I ended up having to take like a 17-year hiatus from the hobby, just because I was active duty, and that was like, life didn't work out for me to be able to do that, and some family stuff. And so I'm very fortunate. I completely skipped over 4th edition. I went from 3.5 to 5, and I found a gaming group with a friend of mine. And actually, I'm not down on 4th edition. I just think I heard somebody talk about this the other day. It was a good game. It was the wrong game. But it was. I found this gaming group. Malrich is actually part of our group.
Yeah,
that just hopped in the chat. Yeah. So I got roped in with these guys through somebody I knew and started playing. And Malrich was actually the GM. Had a great time running through Dragon of Icespire Peak. And then one of the other players stepped in as a game master, and he has his own like very rich, detailed game world. And so we played in his world and had a great time. And then I just decided, hey, I'm going to step in and I want to do this, because I had found an adventure series that I thought was really cool, right? I liked this. I liked the story arc and the idea of it. It hit some tonal elements that are really important to me. This idea of like this constant struggle uphill against almost unknowable or unwinnable circumstances or whatever, to then finally be victorious. And I decided we're going to go ahead and run this, and I was going to do it. And I jumped in with both feet, and didn't have the experience before I started to be able to see all of the ways in which the adventure module was not written very well. And that's why I'm not mentioning it by name. My opinion of it has gone downhill. I think it's a great idea. It didn't execute well. And so we ran that module all the way to completion, and that took about a year. And then over the course of that time, I started piecing together this idea of a campaign where, because I didn't have the experience designing encounters, what I was doing was pulling from published modules and pulling pieces in and mashing it together with this new overarching story arc to be able to build a full 1 to 20 campaign that is across 4 chapters that utilize a bunch of published stuff.
I got to jump in here because it's way funnier than that, right?
I was obsessive.
Give us the truth behind the curtain then.
Okay, so I play in this same group. Travis is game mastering, and okay, so he doesn't have as much experience game mastering. He's doing great, right? Like, we're having fun and people keep coming back, right? So that's fine. He and I also work on building this game, Altered World, together. So we're playing D&D, we're working on Altered World, and we're friends and we talk and stuff like that, right? And then one day he's just like, is this just a thing that happens once you start game mastering? Oh, what? It's like, well, you get ideas, like you like campaigns just sort of happen. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean that happens. And he was like, well, I don't want that. Okay, then don't worry about it. And like over the next few weeks, Travis is just kind of like, he's resisting this idea, but I can tell this seed has just sort of landed in fertile territory in his mind, and I watch it germinate and sprout. And before long, this guy's got a whiteboard set up in his office, and he's like texting me every few days, like, okay, what if we did this and you had this sort of thing happen and this and this and this and this? I'm like, yeah, that's great. Like for somebody who doesn't want to put together a whole campaign, you're doing a lot of putting together a whole campaign.
Yeah. The downfall comes from it, though, and I mean, you all know this as well as I do, is that I build this giant amazing thing, and they do about this much. And then they go this direction, and I didn't write any of that.
I've actually I tried to build this idea, this overall arc, to be resistant to that anyway, right? I built it in a 4-chapter format, and then each chapter is predicated on the idea that the players will make a choice at the beginning of the chapter that will tell me the direction they're going. Excellent. And there's a very clear goal in that chapter. And so the players get to make an informed decision at the beginning of the chapter, what direction they want to go. And then I just prep what they're doing. The other thing, and shout out to, they're probably not associated at all on Twitch, but there's a guy on YouTube that I have just become borderline obsessed with. His name's, it's the Mystic Arts channel. This guy from Iceland, his name's Davi, but he's a fantastic game master and thinks about, I think in his previous day job, he was like in cinema and writing and things like that. So he has a really good perspective on how to thinking about campaigns. And his perspective is always really good. And I've taken a lot from him about the idea that I'm only prepping one session ahead based on what the players are doing. And it's great. The problem is that like, it doesn't take me very long to prep a session. And then I'm left with like the rest of the time to stew. And like just the other day, I think it was yesterday, a whole new campaign popped into my head and started fleshing itself out. And I'm like, I can't possibly get to this thing for 3 years. Right. So, I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we
wrote it down, stuck it on the shelf. And
I mean, it's crazy you say that, but like, our Dress to Quest campaign started almost 2 years ago now. And, we're halfway through Icewind Dale. We're halfway through Rime of the Frost Maiden because we've changed so much of Icewind Dale that the entire story is different. Yeah. We've killed off people that we're not supposed to be killed off. We've changed things that were not supposed to be changed. One of the main things that we changed for ours because our players were hating it was the idea that it was always dark. Like nobody liked that. Yeah. Don't forget to mention that our group did take a test spin around the Altered World. I mean, we're going to get to that. Don't you worry, my friend. We're going to get to that. Yeah. We're about to get to that one here soon. But yeah, like I said, it's I created this creature for my campaign.
Oh, nice. You got a dragon back there?
Oh, it's the Shardolin dragon from Icewind Dale. Only it's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger, and it's a lot meaner looking. Come here. This thing's huge. When I say it's big, this thing is. Yeah. So we had it custom modeled. Let's see if I can get the picture in. Yeah, there he is. Yeah. That's a Shardolin dragon. That little thing that they talk about in Icewind Dale, that's not a Shardolin dragon. But yeah, like, and my players don't know why that's that big. They're like, what changed? Like, don't you worry about it. We'll figure it out. But right now it's torn through 2 cities. Like, and it's on its way to its 3rd one. And they just entered Bryn Shander, and they're trying to discuss with the council right now what everybody can do to team up to make this thing stop. Yeah, for sure. And that's where we're at right now. We're on episode 46. So I mean, we've been playing for a while. And halfway through the book. So yeah. But yeah. So all right. We've made it about halfway. through the evening already, or a third of the way. So we're halfway through our conversation before we had all the wonderful people in our chat room to ask questions. Let's dig into the fun of tonight. So what is Altered World?
I was thinking about this from the super duper Cliff Notes version, because when we're trying to be brief, it takes us about 10 minutes to talk through the whole thing. So it's like we said, it's science fiction fantasy, in the sense that I will say it was heavily inspired in the original time by Shadowrun and GURPS.
Okay.
And with a little bit of things like Rifts and Palladium fantasy thrown in there as well. And so the super duper Cliff Notes version of the story arc is in 2025, aliens arrive. We learn some stuff from them. They try to enslave us. We kill them all. We decide that we're going to go try to wipe them out on their planet. As part of doing that, we accidentally send essentially a small city outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, across a dimensional divide and back in time to the year 809. And it just appears on the shore of Lake Erie.
Okay. I'm following.
About 90% of the global population on this alternate Earth dies off because of radiation from this event.
Oh, that's
the survivors are disfigured. Their kids are mutants. So the second generation born after this end up being mutants with powers. Is the way that ends up. You have another alien race who shows up, helps teach us how to manage this process, because they live inside the radiation that killed off all our people.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mages.
Yeah, go ahead.
So by this time, we've got a couple of different groups of people who have learned how to manifest supernatural powers. Another group sort of learns how to harness a kind of energy that they start calling logos. They'll eventually start calling themselves mages. They become a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
And, time is marching on, right? So we're adding decades and eventually centuries as we go. Somewhere in there, gods will start answering prayers of the faithful. So priests become a power to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
We will make contact with yet a third alien race. They're called the Rias. They're kind of animalistic, very, very fierce race, but they come from a less developed planet. They're not as technologically as advanced as us. They just haven't gotten that far. Not a knock on them. They're not primitive by any means. They just haven't had the time to develop.
Right.
So they get to interact with all of this technology now. And let's see. So the world government kind of unifies, or a world government emerges with the goal of, hey, we know that this first alien race is going to show up eventually, and we want to be ready for them. That's the whole thing, right? Like, that's the driving thing. We want to be able to take them on when they come. So
there's a underlying thread of why everything is happening.
Yeah.
So even if there is a war between two nations or whatnot, the underlying thread for it would be the fact that they're trying to get ahead of the game to be prepared for the aliens, no matter what. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that Seth left out that ties into the mages is there was one mage in particular that he was a big nerd. He was a big nerd. He created a bunch of resorts and populated them with these semi-autonomous illusions of monsters and beings out of fantasy literature and fantasy mythology. So you have elves and dwarves and gnomes and halflings and trolls and orcs. And each of them serve a different function within his resorts. And at some point, he starts he changes his name from Adrian to Belshazzar because it sounded better. And then and then at one point, he just disappears.
I feel like nobody knows where he is. ZAR at the end of your name, though, you've just completely the dynamics of who you are becoming is definitely shown very quickly.
Yeah.
And then you disappear.
So a cult had started to form around him, and then he just disappears. And nobody really understands what happens. But then within a day or so of his disappearance, all of these illusions that were powerful enough that they persisted after he left, they all become real, true, sentient beings. And so now you have this influx of, we have different names for them so that to differentiate, but essentially elves and dwarves and all these things. And then the elves have a strong, or the Shi, as we call them, have a strong tribal kind of national identity, cultural identity, and they go off into the wild side to live on their own. And what wild side, just as a reference, part of the government, you have hyper urbanized centers because the world government taxes these city states based off of square mileage. And so this primary city, New Tech, has got somewhere between 600, 700 million people living in about 100 square miles. I mean, it's super tight.
Okay.
And they do that by building up and building down. And so you have shafts and, kilometers tall buildings. Anyway, so the Shi, a lot of them move out into the wild side, which is, 95% of the earth is pristine wilderness. And they're out there and they just want to live their own life, but they don't want to pay taxes to the UTR for their land use. And so it starts a war because they refuse to comply. And so the UTR takes their Riez stormtroopers that they had gotten and six them on the Shi and all of the other hominids that signed up with them. And that goes on for a while. And then there's this major event involving a dragon crime boss who's crazy bored. And that war ends. And then you have basically 600 years of peace. And so the game is set in the year 1546 by current calendar. And they keep that calendar because at some point they realize that they are able to make contact with the true Earth dimension. And the time streams are locked. And so by keeping that year, they're keeping in sync with the real Earth, the true Earth.
Okay.
And so it's 1546, but you're really looking at 28th century technology.
Okay.
So it goes down a somewhat dystopian, cyberpunkish type thing because you have these environmental controls that are super urbanized, super concentrated. Seth and I differ on our view of the UTR, the world government, which I think is an amazing thing about the way that it's written. I see it as very kind of top-down, authoritarian, people are cogs in the machine kind of thing. We'll provide for your sustenance, but that's it because you are a tool for us to exploit.
Okay.
Seth, you can explain your viewpoint a little better than I can.
I don't know that I have such a strong thesis on it. I just don't look at it as negatively as that. I don't know. But suffice to say, long story short or short story long, that's how we get to Altered World, right? You've got, we're in the future in the year 1540, whatever. We've got aliens, we've got magic, we've got technology. We left a whole lot of game-specific jargon out just so that if anybody's listening, they can hopefully follow along. But I like all the jargon and stuff, the world-building terms, because it is immersive, right? Like when you start talking about Naosh, what it means to be a Sorne versus a Ninshene. Well, shoot, those are weird words, right? And what do they mean? Well, once you use them enough and you get comfortable and they start making sense to you, well, now you're playing Altered World, right? Now it means something. So,
yeah, and I think it's interesting. And I guess for me, somebody who's looking from the outside in, it sounds very sci-fi, which is with just sprinkles of fantasy, which
So the
it's
nice
just
thing about
interesting.
this, about the game setting, is if you want to play like a super cyberpunk kind of game,
Hmm.
set it in one of these urban settings. If you want to play sort of a Shadowrun sort of thing, there's mechanics for that because there's magic around. And if you
Hmm.
want to play a strict sword and sorcery, just leave New Tech, go out into the wild side and ignore all the stuff going on in the cities, and you can have a very sword and sorcery game. And if you want to sprinkle in a little bit of tech so that, every now and again somebody finds a wand of bang bang,
Heck
then
yeah.
you can have a gun show up. That's
Yeah, I
fun.
mean, it's like without going like think about the idea that I think we defined, and I can't remember it exactly off the top of my head, but I think we defined that there's basically only 10 what anyone would think of a city on the whole planet.
Hmm.
There are smaller little settlements that we refer to as nominals, but like for example, there's no true urban setting on Australia.
Hmm.
So that whole continent is completely pristine, and basically, North America has, I think, 4 major settlements, but only 2 of them are actually what you would consider true cities
I got you.
in the context here. So it really is. Depending on what you want to play, it's very easy to just set it in an area of the world where the things you don't want in your game aren't there.
Which is interesting. But it's cool to also think the idea that like you could be playing a sword and sorcery game and then see a spaceship fly over top, and that's the
Yeah.
only thing you ever see because you're like, oh wait, there is more to this than just that area,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Or like you said, something, if you were playing a very cyberpunk game and then all of a sudden you've got magic showing up out of nowhere and you're like, what is this, like where did it come from? And that could dive you quickly into a different story immediately.
Yeah.
So what mechanic system is this built in?
It's our own system.
Okay, it's your own system. Okay.
Yeah. It was we're the
Based
first.
on
Yeah, go ahead.
it's based on 2d10.
Okay.
With a little bit of math up front to basically make it so that you have what we call an ARB, an action roll base, so that you have a number. That ARB gives you a number, and that's what you want to hit on 2d10, and anything over that is gravy, right? That's extra good. With a kind of cool mechanic for when you roll doubles, you get a little candy for that in the form of XP and a chance to roll again. So that's fun.
Yeah, the ARB comes in because we use a fixed DC system. So the idea is that the success threshold on any action is 20.
Okay.
And so it's, whatever your talent, we're a talent focused system, right? So talent plus related attribute, add that together, subtract it from 20. And that produces the number that you have to roll on 2d10 to be successful. And like Seth said, if you roll over that, those success levels can be used in various ways to either make your action more effective, make it happen faster, or look really cool while it happens. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. And so that's, the design philosophy of it was a couple of different things. One, we think that within the context of a given talent, a task that tasks that you may perform aren't necessarily inherently harder than other tasks you would perform, right? Like if you are a brain surgeon, like doing brain surgery has a certain level of difficulty, and that's relative to the talent that you're employing.
Okay.
The conditions under which you're performing that talent will make things harder or easier for you to do.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
And so there's that. And then the other thing is that we want success to be tied to the character sheet, to your character sheet, right? So if I'm trying to hit an opponent in combat, I don't want to have to compare my dice to that stat block.
Okay,
To
I
see
know.
if I was
I know the
successful.
systems.
I was
Okay.
successful because I rolled the right number,
Right.
on my sheet, not on that sheet.
Yeah.
And so those two things really
Free
is
League
the
Publishing
grounding.
does a very similar.
Which one?
Free League Publishing.
Oh, Free League. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, so they do a 2d12 and then d6 system for the One Ring, and it's all based on your TN, like your challenge rating, and it's very similar. And I like that. I like that idea because it takes the mechanical portion away from the dungeon master, so he doesn't have to figure all those questions out, and it gives an actual understanding of right there in front of you. You know exactly what you have to hit, which is something I think Dungeons and Dragons doesn't really do well.
Yeah.
Unless you're in combat. Combat's different, but everything else other than combat, it seems like you're just kind of making it out of an idea that you kind of think you know where the goal is.
Right. The DCs are all pretty arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
In Dungeons and Dragons.
But a TN on in Freely or in the One Ring is not arbitrary because you know exactly what it is no matter what. It's 1d12, and then you roll the amount of sixes that you have in that talent. And if you don't get over that number, you didn't succeed. If you get over that number, you succeed. But it also allows your players to really buy into the idea that they can only do something they actually can do. I think Dungeons and Dragons kind of dives into a little bit more of that. Because the difficulty is so arbitrary, it almost gives the players the thought that they can do way more than their character actually would be able to do. And the reason I say that is like you hear a lot of people, and the joke is, I'm going to try to jump over the moon. Well, I rolled a natural 20. No. A natural 20 means you jump just a little bit better than your absolute best jump. If you can jump with all of the strain of 100% of your body at 20 feet, now you can jump 25. Like, you're not jumping over a moon. It's just not happening. But you still want to make those opportunities to be exciting, right? Like, you want those to be moments. And I think what you guys do allows you to do that, so that the game master, instead of thinking about what he has to come up with mechanically, he's now coming up with, if they succeed this is what happens. If they succeed this epically, this is how I'm going to flavor it to make them feel like they are epically succeeding.
Yeah. There's two other mechanical concepts that I think we really want to push push out. And I want Seth to go first because he's a big fan. We're both fans of both of them. But to me, I think the two other things that really set us apart is the way that our initiative system works in combat and verbal combat in particular. And so, Seth, do you want to talk about verbal combat? Because I think you're slightly more enthusiastic about it than I am.
Oh, yeah, I love verbal combat. I was actually about to talk about spending experience. But
no, you can do that too.
Yeah, so real quick, one thing that I really get excited about besides verbal combat, the fact that in Altered World, as you play, you earn experience, right? At the table, during the session, as well as at the end of the session. So you have a pool of XP. It's a spendable currency. And while you play, you may want to enhance a roll by spending some experience points. And there's rules on how much you can spend, depending on a few things, right? And there's this kind of tension because you have a desire to do well on certain rolls. And sometimes, like especially in combat, you want to hit harder, or if you are trying to resist damage or resist somebody trying to kill you, spending that experience becomes an important cushion. So having a pool of XP around is great, but it's also how you advance your character, right? You want to level up, well, you got to spend XP to do it. You want to get your talent a little bit higher or raise a power rating, spend XP. So if you've spent it all, you don't have it. So I like that tension, that it's this spendable currency that has different competing uses. As far as verbal combat goes, this idea that we made a social combat system where it mirrors the kind of physical combat that people are used to, right? So we gave people something like hit points in verbal combat, where it's not just, it comes down to one roll. Do I make a persuasion check and I persuaded them? It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And it allows people who really like to role play these things out. It gives them some options to do that. And that's always a lot of fun when you have somebody who is actually a fast talker and they want to do that, and then let the dice kind of show how well they did. We've all been at tables where people are good at that, and that's a lot of fun. But then there are people who want to branch out, people who don't necessarily have that skill in and of themselves, but they want to play the characters who do. And again, they can try and role play that out, and the dice can support them on that too. Being able to have a system that allows you to explore those possibilities is a lot of fun, and doing it in more than one dice roll, I think, is pretty important, where there's a little bit of back and forth. There's different ways to use verbal combat, some ways that are outside of traditional combat, and then in a certain limited way, by using what we call a taunt, you can actually, inside of like a gunfight or a sword fight or whatever, you can stand up and be like, hey, everybody stop, or whatever, make a verbal combat roll and see if people will actually listen to you and do what you said, which is a pretty neat effect if you can pull it off.
And for those that have never been in an actual like fight, somebody yells stop in the middle of a fight, normally there's at least a trigger that will happen in your brain that will make you do that for a second. Doesn't do very often, but normally it happens. And it's interesting because that would be enough to, allow for an advantage or somebody else to get something above and beyond. I really like that idea. And I think one thing I like about it is that, one, maybe you're not that skilled at the tongue lashing that you need to be for your character. This gives you the opportunity to have that same experience without maybe being able to talk your way through it. And I think the other thing that's really cool about it is that maybe you are that person. Maybe you are the silver tongue and can talk your way out of anything, but you don't want to play a character that can do that. It kind of gives you those handicaps, because I know a lot of people who play barbarians and they still will try to talk themselves away like they are the most eloquent genius under the books. And I'm like, bro, you have an 8 for intelligence. Like you can make sentences up, but you definitely ain't doing that.
And that's interesting, because this isn't what I was planning to talk about, but along that line, right? Along that line, right? Like, we have advantages and disadvantages that you can take, you can purchase or gain bonus points with, and they work in ways like somewhat akin to like beneficial and disadvantageous feats. And so you can take things where, like, we have one of my favorites is weirdness magnet, and it's literally like whatever the rating is. Once at the beginning of the game,
I like the look on James's face right now. That was great.
Yeah, at the beginning of the game session, the game master makes a roll against your rating in weirdness magnet if you've taken this trait, and if it comes up that if the dice roll says so, like, weird stuff will just happen to you in the middle of the session. And so you get to decide as a player, one, how, like, you get to decide, do I want this to happen at all? And two, how likely do I want it to be? Right? Because you can say, because it's what they call a high target roll. So you're rolling 1d10 and trying to roll over the rating of the weirdness magnet. And so if the game master, if you have a rating 9, there's a 90% chance in that game setting that you're going to have weird stuff just start happening to you. You'll be walking along and this like hellhound will come out of nowhere and start humping your leg or whatever, and it's not bad things necessarily, although there are narrative and social consequences that can happen as a result of this. But it's just weird stuff. And the player can choose to do things like that. They can also do things like, we have one that's called mistrust, where you choose a group. It was originally written specifically for like law enforcement. But like you choose a group that just doesn't like you, like on site. You've just got one of those faces that the cops want to punch. And so anytime you interact with them, the game master makes a roll and figures out whether or not they are going to react on this mistrust or not. And so it gives a way for the player to kind of shape the kinds of social interactions that they're going to have, while also allowing the game master this narrative tool to drive story. So it's a really neat concept.
So
I think
something
for me,
like mistrust, and then I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm curious on this. So something from like mistrust, is this something that you can present to or take for your character so that they get benefits for something else, or is this just something?
It's a point-based system. So you take mistrust as a drawback that earns you points, and you can spend them to benefit you elsewhere.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure, because I'm like, dude, I'm not taking mistrust if it's going to get if I've got to burn points to take mistrust. It's just not happening.
No. Yeah, it gives you extra points towards your character building.
Okay,
right. Yeah, and so at character creation, the thing that one of the things that always drew me to this game was that at character creation, you're creating a character, right? One thing that I don't like about a lot of games that I play now, whether it's tabletop role-playing games or video games even, is this chasing the meta, right? Like, here's your build. This is really what you need to do. And everything becomes cookie cutter. It's going to be hard to do that in Altered World, right? The way we've set up character creation, what do you want to be good at? What do you want to do? And
then how do you want to do it?
Yeah. So start with a character in mind, start with a story, and go from there, build an interesting story.
See, I guess I'm a very, very odd game master, because I will let my players change mid-game if their character makes more sense that direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I think this just allows you to do, that with an actual mechanic to it. Yeah. But I think it's something that if the story makes sense of a player, because we all know that we have a concept of what we think our character is going to be, and then we get placed into something that changes the mentality or the concepts or the entire core of a character because something has shaken that character and now they're moving a different direction. I think one thing that as a game master you have to be willing to do is to look and see that, have a conversation with your players, or your players need to come up to you and be like, hey, I think this character's going this direction, and this just doesn't, my class or my features, I'm not going to use them anymore because it doesn't make sense for my story. I think as long as there's a good conversation there, I don't see it as a problem, but I do like the idea though that yours is already built into it, which really is a cool opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, for me, to the point that Seth was talking about, it's all about meaningful decisions, right? Like in Brand X or D&D, really, I mean, I'm not talking trash about it, but at the end of the day, when you build a character from a mechanics perspective, you have 4 meaningful decisions to make. What is your species? What is your class? What is your background? What is your subclass? And then beyond that, it's whatever backstory you can create to make that an individual, make it a person. When you start talking about between 10 species, 6 different ways in which you can have powers, 130 powers with 17 ways you can manipulate them, 50 talents, like you start having, there's so many, and it's a buffet, and you only get one trip through, and you've only got so much room on your plate from the number of points you have. Every decision you make is a meaningful decision when you build that character. And that's why, like Seth is talking about, one of the things we kind of feel like we've got 2 different character creation methods. One is intended specifically for people who have never really played Altered World before or are new to it. And it's kind of an idea engine to build the idea of what your character is.
Okay.
But then there's full creation, which is like, here you go, here's your points, just build your guy, right? And it's kind of like being thrown into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Like if you don't have an idea of some little hook to build your character around, if you don't have that, like you're going to be lost. Like there's a lot of options, and you're going to end up with something that's not cohesive and whatever. And so just even like a little nugget, like I want to echo this comic book character or whatever, or latch it onto some specific mechanic that you find interesting, things like that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Do you mind if I switch gears just real quick?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we talk about this before we get to the Q&A session. So our initiative system, this is arguably one of my favorite parts of the entire game. There's something for anybody who's not familiar with it. It's called the OODA loop. Or the Boyd cycle. It's observe, orient, decide, and act. And it was formulated for dogfighters. The idea was that dogfighters that could observe what's going on, orient to it, make.
You mean like pilots, right?
Yeah. Not people who fight dogs.
Yeah.
But that like people who could do these 4 actions or these 4 processes in their mind and do them faster, consistently won. And so what we've been able to do with we call it response, but it's our initiative system, is we've gamified that. So unlike most games where when you win initiative, you're going to get to go first. What happens is the person who wins initiative or wins response, they declare their action last. Everyone at the table, all the combatants go through from lowest response score to highest response score, and they declare what their action is going to be. And so the person who won the response roll knows what everybody else is going to do before they decide what they're going to do. And in a game where individual action, you can take actions in combat that directly affect the effectiveness of other characters' actions, then this information becomes the most valuable thing you can have. And then what happens is you resolve all of the actions in a stepwise way, but essentially they all get resolved at the same time.
Okay.
And they're all occurring at the same time. And with practice, it gets to be really fast. And even we're doing a little bit of rules modification based off some con play testing that we had recently. But I will say at this last con, I ran with 4 players, and I think somewhere in the vicinity of like 6 or maybe 8 NPC combatants. So somewhere between 10 and 12 people involved in the fight.
Okay. I
ran through an 8 round, 8 full rotations around the table, combat in just under an hour.
Okay.
Which I think from my experience in D&D, that would probably be closer to 2, maybe 2.5.
Especially when you factor in these were new players who didn't know the rules, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so like we weren't able to take advantage of, once everybody at the table knows how to play the game and knows the mechanics of it, you can say, okay, everybody at the table who's making a defensive action, roll your dice. And then everybody who's making an attack action, go ahead and roll your dice. And then we'll see how the math plays out. And then we just craft this narrative line at the end that describes the action that just occurred in the last 1 second of game time. And so I think when you want, there's a learning curve with every game, and we're a little on the mathier side. We're trying to fix that a little bit, but we don't want to lose too much of what we gain from doing that math. But we're still really fast when it comes to combat, and if you really look at it on a turn by turn basis, and so it's a lot of fun, and the idea that like I can take an evasive action. We were doing a playtest. Seth, you were playing one of the archetype characters, and he decided to take 2 defensive actions at the same time because of the way that the character was built. And basically had like 5 or 6 characters all surrounding, like some of them shooting at him, someone trying to hit him, and like nobody even hit because he was able to kind of do this matrix dodgy thing. And it was a lot of fun. So, yeah,
it sounds like an interesting concept, and I'd love to see it in action, because I think that would really explain exactly what I'm thinking. OODA loop based off of programming, not dogfighting, but for me, it makes sense because it's that cycle of going up and then back, up and then back. But I'd be curious to see the amount of actions that can be taken, what is happening, and then how that explains not only mechanically, but how you explain that storyteller as a storyteller for that round. And after using now multiple systems, like I said, I don't think there's a perfect system yet. I still don't think we've hit we haven't found the golden system yet, and I don't know if we ever will. At least for initiative, combat, those types of things. Because I think it bases off of the concept of what tone and what story you're trying to tell. A combat is going to look very differently in a very mystery-based, investigator-based system like Call of Cthulhu, where you don't fight things in Call of Cthulhu because you're going to die immediately, or we'll go all the way to the exact opposite, which is like Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, where most likely you're going to have 6 actions that you can do in one turn, and you're like, okay, that's so much. So like there has to be this balance, but at the same time, I do believe that it also depends on how you play and what your storytelling style is. And I'm curious to see where this one goes. I'm always interested in seeing new ways to do certain concepts.
As game designers and developers, one thing we talk about is the tension in rules between realism and complexity versus efficiency and ease of play, right? So the more realistic we want to get, the more complex the rule system has to be. Well, that takes time. And so whenever we're looking at rules or looking at rules again and whether or not we want to revise this, that's where we start fighting ourselves. Is like, well, we really like the realism that this thing gives us. If you think about, I don't know, degrees of arc for machine gunners or something like that. We have had arguments about this because who cares about degrees of arc? My eyes glaze over. Right?
Well, and from my perspective,
he took the bait. He took the bait.
No, I countered that argument and said there are soldiers that have employed machine guns in real life that will want to do these kinds of things, and in a game.
So we have rules for it, right? So,
but you don't need
it's and we found a way, right? And there is this tension between setting it up so that it is sufficiently realistic, but not so cumbersome that it hurts to play. And I think all game systems have to have an answer for that. And just like you're saying, James, what story are they trying to tell? This sort of epic, heroic, mythological. I can literally go toe to toe with a dragon. Versus the cosmic horror is going to get me, right? And they set up very different tones. So we talk about that some in our game too, right? Like we devote some time to mode and genre and how to adjust those. Those are knobs and dials that you can adjust as a game master to get different effects, and we have rules for that so that you can have both within this system, which gives a game master a lot of flexibility.
I'd be curious to see which ones you see once the game is out and kind of in people's hands more aggressively, what modes and genres people lean towards with your system, because that's really going to tell you the truth on like which direction if they feel is correct, right? And I don't know that answer. some systems are so niche to the point where they are built for that genre or that type of game.
Yeah.
Other systems are built for a very broad game. But then again, once the players have a hold of it and the game master has a hold of it, what do you see as them leaning towards? And I think that's the biggest question you'll have to ask yourself once that comes out to that point. Because not only that, but then that's gonna give you an idea of what additions need to be looked at, right? Like, do you want to be this giant broad system, or do you want to focus in on things that are actually, that the community that you've built is looking at? And if it's not going to be the mystery, or it's not going to be the cosmic horror, or it might not be the swords and sorcery, it might be this strange amalgamation in between. But I don't think any system really is out there to this day. Even though I have friends of mine that swear on BRP, and I have friends of mine that swear on GURPS, that are like, no matter what, this runs for everything. There's still those focus points that, like, you have to find where your focus is on these things. And I think it's a good question, a good way to kind of segue into where the next step is, which is happy hour has begun, which means those who have a glass can raise it high, have your drink. And while you're doing that, please drop questions in the chat room and we'll answer it. And for the most part, I'll answer anything, and they get to choose whatever they would like to answer. So,
as long as you're not asking my kid's name, I mean, we're
nope,
good.
I don't do kid stuff. Not on stream. We have a friend of ours that wants to do a podcast, and I said I can do an audio podcast. I said, as soon as we do video, I said, the kid's got to go. Not doing it.
Yeah.
And I torture my child in my games, so it's okay. No, my child's 11, and they're very integrated into the nerd world, and they understand the idea that consequences can happen to their characters. But they're also 11. So I have to realize that I can't do everything I would do to an adult to an 11-year-old. And this type of conversation has come up multiple times this last couple of weeks, where I had to reel back a moment that was extremely dramatic, that almost killed off my child's character. And we had to walk them through actually what those emotions were, which for a dad who has to do that for their kid in a video or in a storytelling game was a lot more dramatic than I've even had to with, like, long-term players that I've been playing with for years. Like, could you see?
I've had those experiences. I call those truth and consequences sessions.
Yeah. Well, the character died. The week before was their birthday episode. So every one of my friends that are at the table, they get a birthday episode, which is their characters are completely focused around their character for that episode. And we play Shadow Dark, so we're already playing a very grim game. We don't play old D&D anymore. At least not here at the table, because I run with 11 players. I don't have time to play with D&D. It's too long. I won't get through anything. And we were very storyteller driven, and they had a dream sequence where they met their god and they gained a weapon that was really cool. And then the next episode, they fell in battle, and their character is built on the idea that their god is the god of battle and half orcs and all the cool stuff like that. Well, they saw their god again, and when he reached out his hand, they went to take it, and I had to remind them that if you grab that god's hand, your character will no longer be, living. And watching their eyes start to well, I said, but you don't have to grab the hand. There are consequences to not grabbing the hand. You don't have to grab the hand. So we had to walk through that conversation, which was a little more dramatic and emotional than we had expected to happen.
That's amazing.
It was a good time. So yeah, we gave them a -2 consequence, so they had to pick a stat point that they had to take a -2 in, which for anybody else who's played means you just take a -1 in the actual ability check. Yeah. But what happened was when they picked charisma, so instead of reaching for their hand, they reached for their face, and I burned the brand into their face. When they woke up, they have this giant hand mark now on their face.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and their goal now is to redeem themselves in their god's eyes instead. Because I have, when my players get to certain levels, some of my players say, my characters, it's time for my character to retire. And I let them retire, and they bring a new character in at the level that everybody else is, and they move on with the game. I asked them at the end of the game. I said, "Hey, this happened to your character. Your character's been through a lot. Would you like to let them just go live their happy old life and walk off into the sunset, or would you like to continue playing the character?" And they said, "Nope. I want to redeem myself. I'm going to find a way to do it." And they kept playing the character. I was like, "You realize you have a giant hand mark burned into your face?" They're like, "Yes." Okay, got it. As long as we're all on the same page, that's all that matters. And that's made some consequences in towns and stuff when they walk into a town and they're like, and it's better when you find somebody who's of the same religious faith as that person. Like, oh, that's a brand. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. Hey, we have a lot of people in the chat room. Somebody drop a question. While they're doing that, though, we're going to pull out what I call the happy hour question guide, which is a D20. One of you, please roll me a D20 while we're letting our audience cool questions. What we got?
First nat one of the night.
Oh, damn.
All right. Well, this is a good one then. As a game master, have you ever made a ruling in a game that you later regretted, and were there consequences to that rule?
I'm sure, yes. Can I think of it off the top of my head on a live stream? Gosh. Come back to me on that. I'll have a story for you in a second.
Okay.
Well,
either one, you can answer it. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, you don't really have a lot of time there, Seth, because I haven't been game mastering long enough to have screwed it up.
It's been a minute since I game mastered, though. It's been over a year.
Or is there a ruling that you had to make on the fly that was either taken wrong or was found out later that wasn't the right ruling?
I had something like that in a I guess it was, we were using Pathfinder rules at the time, and it was, I guess you'd call it a homebrew sort of setting. Did you ever read the Black Company by Glenn Cook? I was trying to make an adventure very inspired by that.
Okay.
So not a lot of magic, and when you ran into magic, it was supposed to be a big deal. And I had the party run into some magic, and I had some stuff going on that I thought was just flavor text, right? And the bad guy that emerged out of this fountain was floating above the air, and that was all, not slinging fireballs or anything. But they picked up what I'd put down earlier, that magic is a big deal. So it was floating above the ground by a few inches, and they didn't stick around to find out. They just left. So there was some plot that didn't happen, a whole encounter that I didn't expect them to run from. Who runs from anything? They just
I
left.
love it.
Yeah.
My players know that running is an option, always.
Well, these guys just never had before, right?
Yeah.
So I was surprised. So that one got
good for that.
That one got me.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good one. Shadowdark. I've been breaking rules all the time because we've just started diving into it. One of the things I tell people with that game specifically is let your characters have max HP off the beginning. It's not a healthy game. That's a rough game. I killed the priest off in the first game, the first combat, first round, and he was the only one that could actually heal. It was a bad day.
I've just started looking into it a little bit, basically because a buddy of mine's kids. What did Melrich? What'd you got?
We'll read that one. What about your buddy's kids? And then we'll come straight to this question.
My buddy's kids got into D&D, and then their group at their homeschool and the library group kind of died out. And so the kid, he's got, I don't know, 17 kids or something. He's got at least a fire team, or at least a squad. He's trying to get them what they need so that they can start playing on their own. And with them not having game master experience, like, you know, everyone points to like Lost Minds of Phandelver or whatever, these specific modules that are good for new game masters. And you look at them, and if you're an experienced game master and you look at them and you're like, well, that's not actually a good adventure for a new game master, because it's not written well necessarily in certain areas. And so I got a suggestion to look at some of these OSR light systems like Shadow Dark. And so I pointed them towards the quick start guide so that they can, you know, have a low investment. And so I've been kind of eyeing it a little bit. It's an interesting system. I like the torch mechanic. Seems really interesting.
Yeah, I love the torch mechanic. And we have a giant light that sits over our game table. And everybody gets mad at me when I get up, because normally I go over and I slam the light and it scares everybody and I turn all the lights off with everybody. The cool thing with Shadow Dark is as soon as lights go out, bad things happen. It's awesome. You have a table you roll on and things just appear out of nowhere. It's cool. It's great. The thing I have to get used to with Shadow Dark, though, is that Shadow Dark doesn't really have a CR rating. It's all random tables. So you might walk into a room where it's a CR7 monster and you're a CR2, and you either have to make that call. Do you run or do you fight? And a lot of times running is an option. For your buddy's kids, though, I'm going to sponsor real quick. Gooey Cube makes whole boxes full of everything you need for one adventure. You don't have to have any other books. It's fantastic. That was my sponsor for. Well, that was the unofficial sponsor for the night. So we do have sponsors that we'll announce at the end of the night because they're awesome. They do amazing things for us. Okay, so let's get back to the question, because it's a long question. I've got to make sure I'm reading it all. One of the biggest challenges I've faced as a game master is making sure the pacing of a session is good and that all participants are engaging and contributing. How in Altered Worlds, or any system really, do you manage the math versus the story mechanics?
You know, I'm getting better at this, I think, right? Because I've started thinking more about our sessions as episodes in a television series that's continuous, and being able to look at, you know, like, just as an example, there was in the last campaign, there was a thing where I was deliberately trying to avoid having to come back for another session just for the big boss fight, right? And now on the other side of it, I'm like, it's actually probably better to like roll in, give the players like, here you go, you know, give the description of like, here's this big crazy monster, and that's where we're going to cut, and leave on that cliffhanger, or even roll initiative and then we're cut and we'll come back in next week or whatever. And I think that the story mechanics is something I'm getting a little better on, I hope. I mean, Rich can attest to whether or not I've gotten any better over the last year and a half or so. But I think the math piece is actually, for me at least, not anything that I've ever had a problem with. The mechanics, the numbers seem to work for me in my head, and I'm just able to kind of track the effect of it. It's a little harder, I think, with some systems. D&D in particular, I think has got some issues where just the graduation of difficulty classes, you know, you've only got like gradations of 20%, and that's a little tough. And so then I'm the kind of person that I don't like the idea of arbitrarily saying this is a 17 versus a 16. Mm-hmm. I want my players, and it's out of a sense of fairness, right? Like, I don't want to accidentally cheat my players. of their
He likes to
moment of
cheat us
glory.
on purpose.
Yeah, always on purpose.
That's different.
But no, I mean it's tough, right? Like I'm constantly, in our session too. That's the other thing. We have a narrow window of time to play each week. We're only able to do about 2-ish hour sessions, and so we end up hour and a half, 2 hours typically is what we end up doing. And so I'm always having to like keep an eye on the story, keep an eye on the combat, and keep an eye on the clock, because we've got to stop at a certain time because everybody's, we're distributed all over the country and people have to get to bed.
Oh yeah.
But then trying to figure out, okay, how do I pace this so that it doesn't drag, but we get to a fight? And honestly, like one of my favorite tactics that I've started to employ actually now are skill challenges. Mm-hmm. I first heard of them on a podcast, actual play, and starting to pull them in. I love them because it gives the players just this opportunity. It's like, here's this problem. Look at your character sheet and figure out things that you might be able to do. And we'll make some dice rolls to see how it works. And then it allows this opportunity for like at the table banter, and it can take a little bit more time. And the players really feel like they're
those moments. I do this.
With it. I love it.
I just sit back and I just let everybody talk. Sit there and listen. And then because the crazy thing I tell people all the time is my player's going to come up with better ideas than I did.
Oh yeah.
You're going to do it every time. The funny thing, I'm going to tell you this, because you're like, I skipped over this. You know where skill challenges came from?
No.
4th edition.
Not surprising.
4th edition was when they started bringing not only skill challenges, but they started bringing group skill challenges, which was originally it was introduced as like a homebrew in 3rd edition, and then they implemented it in 4th. 4th edition is where they actually coined that. We all improve a little each time we collaborate. The shorter online session play well into the episodic formula. Yeah. Normal games are running between 2 and 3 hours nowadays. I don't think people have the attention span that they used to. I think COVID really was the pinnacle of 6-7 hour games. Even if you look at the live play game systems. So
yeah, for me, it's more stage of life. When I was younger, I just had more time I could throw at
absolutely.
Now, I don't know if we play, especially if we play on a work night, which is just what our schedule as a group allows. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little shorter, but man, sometimes I miss those 5 or 6 hour sessions. That's for sure.
I've gotten luck. I've been very, very fortunate and lucky to find the groups I have right now. My online games are still between 2 and 3 hours, and that's about it. But our home table, because it's families, it's 3 separate families that all come over. It's the old school way of playing. People show up at noon. Everybody's got a crock pot. You eat for 2 hours. You eat for an hour.
Glorious.
You break open the table. We play for a couple hours. We take a break. We come back. We play for a couple more hours. Everybody goes home. Or we just continue to play. We've had some nights where people are bantering for an hour, 2 hours at the beginning, but as soon as everybody sits down at the table, they're playing until the end of the game or the end of that night. And we do that bi-weekly right now, and it's absolutely awesome. But like I said, we have 11 players too, so we got to get through a lot in a very short period of time. Even 5 hours isn't a long time for 11 players.
And I've run 7 at a time. I can't imagine doing 11. That's nuts.
Yeah, our average is about 9, but we open it for 11 so that we actually just this week we upgraded our game table, because we had 8-player table and we were sitting extra people around the table, and we just moved to a 10-player table. So and it's a lot. It's a lot for the room, but it's definitely, everybody's excited to get back to the table and playing. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we kind of get both of those opportunities, which I'm completely fortunate to have. Any other questions, or we can roll on the dice board again? I'm down for either. Both of these are great.
Let's see what we got. same one. Let's see. I got a 19. Go to the other end of the table.
Okay, this is interesting. So you rolled a natural 1 first, and then a 19.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's funny because this is the question you're going to get. Then is what is the worst thing that has happened to you on a natural 1?
So, I'm still bitter about this. Like 20 years later.
Here we go.
So I was playing Forge of Fury, and I was a paladin, heavy armor, whole shtick. That freaking rope bridge right at the very beginning rolled a nat 1 on my reflex save, followed by another nat 1 on my I rolled I can't remember if I rolled a 1 on the actual like acrobatics check, whatever the check was to cross. But then I rolled a nat 1 on my reflex save. And I've got the words burned into my memory of like, you fall into a river and are swept into a lightless, airless cavern and die. I'm like, we were I think we were 1 session into the campaign. I'm like having to go over and make a new character. It wasn't the worst session I had in that campaign, but holy crap, that was my worst natural 1.
Yeah. What about you, Seth?
I don't know. I've never rolled a natural 1. I don't even have a story that good for a natural 1. Nothing jumps out at me as being super dramatic like that. Like, something dumb like falling in combat or dropping a sword, breaking something like that. It sucks, but nothing where I've got like a real good story out of it, unfortunately.
I always tell my son's story. It was his first game ever playing. He was 9 at the time, and we were in a town, and the first thing he said was, "I want to find a blacksmith. I want to build a hammer." Okay, bud, try this. So he walks into this blacksmith. He asks if he can build a hammer, and he welds 2 pieces of metal together because he rolled a natural 1. And then he rolled an additional natural 1, and he had to pay triple the price for his 2 pieces of metal, which was not a hammer. It was not a hammer. He just literally melted 2 iron bars together, and that was all he's got. And I was like, you didn't even put the stick on it. He's like, yeah, no. All right. So yeah, and to this day he gets on me about that one. It's like, Dad, he's like, you realize the first time we ever played, you made me weld 2 pieces of metal together. I said, yeah, I did. That's what happens when you get a natural 1. Bad things happen. They do. Bad rolls make a good story. Absolutely. All right. Well, we are closing in on the last night at the end of the night. So before we close for the evening, why don't we do our final roll for the evening? And you can't get a 19 and you can't get a 1. Got to get something else.
Go for it, Seth.
Well, how about a 3?
Okay. This is an interesting one, but you kind of explained it as well, especially with your system. Are there any aspects of a TTRPG that you've taken from one system and used in another? Or rather, what is your favorite? What is your favorite thing that you saw in one TTRPG that you moved to Altered Worlds?
Well, I think the mechanics were set so long ago that it was actually, I think, a lot of, at the time, really the only mechanics that were floating around out there were things like dice pools in a couple of games. Mm-hmm. I think GURPS was using 3D6, and you had World of Darkness was out, and then you basically had the plethora of games that sat on either D20s or percentile dice. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's I don't know. I don't know that there's a specific thing that we pulled from other systems other than the point buy.
Allow me to interject.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Edge and Hitch.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
So this is a mechanic that we're working through right now, and we've gone back and forth about whether or not it was going to work. Trying to go from what we're calling now hard mode, the very crunchy, very granular positive negative modifier to your dice rolls, and moving to our version, our interpretation of the advantage disadvantage type dice system. And so what we go with is, because we're a 2d10 system, the way it'll work is you'll do you'll roll 3d10, and you either take the 2 highest dice or the 2 lowest dice, depending on whether you have an edge on the roll or you have a hitch on the roll.
Okay.
One of the things we figured out is that this very quickly limits the mathematical impact of modifiers. And so we're like, I don't know if we really want to do that. And so what we've ended up doing is going away from the way that D&D tends to do this, where it's if you have one advantage and one disadvantage, it cancels out and it's just a normal rule, and you can't have 2 advantage or whatever. We actually utilize that numerical quantification, right? So the idea is you can have 5 things that give you an edge and 2 things that give you a hitch, and you've got an edge on the roll. It's still only 3d10. The mathematical, the probability doesn't change, but the way we describe it is the durability of the effect, or the magnitude of the effect isn't affected. It's the persistence of the effect.
Right.
So if you've got 5 hitch on a roll, it just means you've got to look for a lot of different ways to improve your state before you can get to an edge.
Okay.
And it's got some interesting things. We ran some Monte Carlos on it, and it has a pretty dramatic impact on botches. We don't have a critical hit, but we do have what we call a botch, or a critical success, or a critical failure. I don't like calling it a critical failure, because you can still succeed on a botch. You just have some kind of bad thing occur. It's double ones. So if you have an edge on the roll, that goes from a 1% probability down to a 0.1% probability. But if you have a hitch, it goes from 1% to almost 3%. And so you have this wild swing in the probability of something bad happening while you're doing your action. And that was all a refinement that like I said, we're still kind of making sure that this is the direction we want to go. But I think that we've got all of the nails hammered down that are going to poke us in the feet.
And what system did you pull that from?
Well, it's inspired by advantage, disadvantage.
Oh, okay. It's inspired by, okay. The reason I'm saying that is because it says very similar to how Renegade Games does their action system, their action TTRPG, because they use the word of snag and edge. So, but theirs is based more off of the
snag. That's a good one.
we
were searching for what to call it. We didn't
so the way theirs works is you roll a and my brain's not working on what I think it's still a D20, but then you have your die that you push up to, so you can have your advantage or your disadvantage, but then you also have another die, which is actually the one where your critical comes from. So the snag or the edge only allows you for the D20. And then your actual other die that you're rolling for is the one that actually, if it hits the highest number, then it becomes a critical. So, but you have to pass your DC first for it to work. So you might get a critical on a 6 if you have a 6-sided die, but if you as a total aren't above what you need to be, it doesn't matter. So the critical fails. So, but yeah. That's a cool system, and I really think it's something you definitely should look into with that, because it definitely seems like it's something different. One of my favorite things about TTRPGs is how different things have become. It's not D20, it's not D10, it's not percentile. There's so many options now. D6s are coming back. The D12, D6 system is a big thing for Free League. Borg has their own system. Renegade has their own system. Then you have explosive dice, all sorts of these crazy opportunities to build cool stories. Real quick, where can they find you as we close down for the evening?
The central hub is probably interactiongames.com. If people want to check out the product itself, we have what's called the Beer and Pretzels kit, which is our quick start. It's 10 pre-generated characters, a full kind of cyberpunk dungeon crawl adventure, and all the core rules. It's available for free download on DriveThruRPG. If you just search for Altered World, it'll show up. And then we're on, Threads and Instagram and X and
all the
Facebook
fun,
and
all the places,
stuff.
right?
Come follow us, shoot us a message, like our reels, all this stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it was great having you guys on here, and you guys are very passionate about your system. It sounds like it's a lot of fun. And I think for people that really want that blend of sci-fi and fantasy, it gives them that opportunity for both. For those that have watched and hung out with us this evening, thank you for joining us. Our new followers and subscribers, thank you. It means a lot to us. Real quick, we're going to give a shout out to all of our awesome sponsors for the year, actually, because they've been here all year for us. Monument Studios is our music sponsor for the year. They are awesome. They have over 5,000 professional audio sounds, and you can use the code MISFIT for 30% off with 3 months free. If you like Click Clacks, I like Click Clacks, so go get your next set over at CanadianDice.ca. Use the code word MISFIT15 for 15% off. You can get cool apparel like Beaker Builds or Beaker's Garage and Tabletop Misfits specific merchandise over at Dungeon Grandmaster. And last but not least, our newest sponsor, Last Hope Printing, gives us a whopping 40% off your entire order using the code MISFIT, all capital letters. You can find them over at lasthopeminiatures.com. This, once again, has been an awesome opportunity. I'm hoping you guys continue to push forward with this Altered World. Looking forward to seeing it in publication. I'm going to have to check out the Beer and Pretzels version because, Tavern, Beer and Pretzels kind of lives with itself. I think here soon, probably in 2026, we're going to stop doing this portion of it. What I'm going to ask you to do, though, is if you want to know what's going on in the Misfits world, come join our Discord. It's the best way to do it. You get flags every time we have a new show, and we have shows 4 days a week. So, easiest way to find us. You can find us on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Tomorrow night, we have Beaker at Beaker's Garage, where he's going to be painting new Gundam miniatures from the new Gundam trading card game that is also coming out in the next couple of months. They're doing a full TTRPG in the Gundam universe, which I'm super psyched of as a Gundam fan. Last but not least, if you're looking to say hi, I'll be at PAX Unplugged starting tomorrow, and I'll be there all weekend. I'm going to be joined by the amazing Dungeon Samster, who is our storyteller for Night of the Worm, our World of Darkness TTRPG, along with my wonderful friend Classic Sam in YGM. And we're going to be all hanging out there, having fun, meeting more creators, getting more guests, and hopefully more things for everybody to see in the community. Anyways, thank you all for hanging out with us. I'm going to ask two last things. I know I asked for a lot. I'm asking for two really very important last things. One, when the ending screen comes on, please stick around for just a couple minutes. We're going to go raid some friends so that more people can see us giving forward. And secondly, if you don't mind, pop over to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow it as much as we are our Twitch channel so that we can start multi-streaming, and give us a subscribe over there. It costs absolutely nothing, but it means a lot. We have to get to 500 subscribers before we can start multi-streaming. And with that, I call it last call. So raise your glasses high. This is Tavern Talks, and we'll see you guys all next week for another guest as we end for the evening. Good night, y'all.